Welcome to the Strothman Strategic Advisory Series Roundtable. My name is Matthew Saltzman. I am the Director of Strategic Advisory Services. In these uncertain times, information is power. Things are moving so quickly that if you blink, it's different. Here at Strothman & Company, we believe that the more information we can provide to our clients and friends, the better we can serve them. Our desire is to provide you with key insights and information that you can use and can't get anywhere else. In that spirit, we created this roundtable series to get you the information directly from the people who make the decisions. This monthly roundtable series will allow you to listen to the key business leaders in our community, discuss the topics that are impacting you daily, and tell you what these leaders are really thinking. Each month, we will be holding conversations with key leaders in banking, law, government, financial services, and other critical economic sectors. And our mission is to provide you with the opportunity to watch the conversation from the inside. These conversations are unscripted and will touch on many topics, some of them controversial. I hope you enjoy, and thank you for watching. Welcome to the first of the Strothman Advisory Services executive roundtables. Today, we're going to be focusing on the banking and the state of the economy. And with me, I have four very experienced and seasoned executives in the banking sector, Louisville. I have Bill Poindexter from Stockyards, Mark from Central Bank, Greg from Republic, and Dennis Heischman from Old National Bank. These four banks represent the stalwart of our economy. They are some of the strongest banks in the region. They are all very, very good community banks and great corporate partners. And we have great relationships with all of them. And I'm very, very grateful that they've taken their time today to participate in this roundtable. The objective today is that we want to really review the state of the economy. We want to look at the banking environment and how that relates to all the things that are going on today. As everybody's aware, it is not normal times, and there are federal programs putting money out. Businesses are struggling. There's a very big difference between Wall Street and Main Street, and that's some of the topics that we're going to try to hit today. The format today will be a conversational format where everybody can interact with each other and can through the questions, and we expect that there'll be a lot of good conversation that comes out of this and for it to really evolve with some deep thoughts and some insights for you. I'm Matthew Saltzman from Strothman Advisory Services, and I'll be participating in the conversation as well. I'm going to start with a topic that's near and dear to everybody's heart, particularly as we come to the end of the first set of 8 weeks on the PPP loans, and that is the forgiveness and what that looks like. The conversation is timely, as just 2 days ago, there were some new regulations that came out, and if we wait a few more days, there'll probably be some more. But I'm going to start with Phil, and tell us a little bit about, as you see it, your bank processed a tremendous amount of PPP loans, and as did all of you. But as you look at that forgiveness as it's starting to evolve now, what are some of the things that you notice about it that are things to watch for, things that can clarify? What kind of insights can you give?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of changes going on right now with legislation. Last week, the House passed, almost everyone voted for it, to increase, among other things, increase the covered periods. So it is still changing. The Senate approved that too. I don't think the president signed it yet. She's done it today sometime. But the basis of forgiveness has not changed. It's basically your qualified expenses that you incur over a covered period of time. And the original law, that was going to be an 8-week period. And that 8-week period is coming due for, I think, the loans that were made at the very beginning of the program. The changes that they've just instituted, they'll become law. The biggest change is they've increased this covered period to 24 months. And what that means is, you have a longer period of expenses that will increase the size of the forgiveness calculation. And I think, my guess is that we'll make most of these loans 100% forgivable. It will also probably draw out this process a little bit. I do think they're going to allow some people to elect an 8-week forgiveness period. I don't know how many people will do that because it would be a lower forgiveness amount. But if you elect a 24-month period, my guess is that we're looking 24 week. My opinion is that we'll probably draw out this process and give us all some time to figure it out. The banks, the SBA will put out what's called a interim final rule. They have not done that based on the latest changes. There will probably be some changes to the application. And I think everybody on the call today is very hopeful that the SBA and Treasury will come up with a form to expedite the smaller loans in this process. I think probably 75 to 80% of the loans we made, our bank did not think everybody would have the same experience, were under $150,000. And so if they could expedite that process, it would be wonderful for everyone involved. So it's a process that we're going to form over the next week. But I suspect now that they've extended this covered period, that the overwhelming majority of these requests will come out over a longer period of time.
Yeah, I think this is Dennis. I think the other big change is that previously 75% of the forgiveness was related to payroll, and they reduced that to 60%. So I think that helps companies that are not as payroll heavy but have other expenses like rent and things that they were going to have difficulty hitting that 75%. So I think both of these changes are really good for it's good for the bank, and it's good for the borrowers. And we look for the process to really extend out, which I think will let us not have to stay up all night working on stuff like we did for the original PPP loans.
I was going to ask you about that. In the original PPP loans, it became an all-consuming process for you, with resources being drawn from everywhere to get this done, particularly in the first round. And that draws away from everything you do on a normal basis and your normal work. Does the extension tend to give you a little bit more flexibility and a little bit more latitude in terms of being able to focus on some of your core business and being able to service customers in a more normal course of business without feeling so consumed by these loans, where I'm sure I've heard it from a few bankers, some people actually wish that they hadn't had a PPP because they would rather not have been engaged in this, but had no choice. Do you feel that extension works both ways in terms of helping both the consumer and the bank?
Yeah, I do. And the interesting aspect is that, businesses have been so focused on, and banks so focused on the PPP, but now we need to step back and really look at what the needs of the clients are beyond PPP, and whether it's the Main Street program or if it's just reaching out to our clients and listening and trying to determine what their path is to get back to where they were. And all that's just got a tremendous amount of uncertainty around it.
Yeah, I think unquestionably to your point, sorry, Mark.
Oh, go ahead.
Unquestionably to your point, it's helpful because, as Dennis was just walking through, the impact of COVID on clients is truly so much more extensive than just the impact of this PPP loan. It's helpful and it's necessary, as many would argue that it was. But it is going to be imperative that we understand clients' needs, what's changed in their operations, how they've adapted, how agile they have been. And so therefore, really, the credit quality and the metrics that are important to all of us, I think we'll be focused on.
Yeah, I agree with what everybody has said. I think the uncertainty and the dribble out of information that's come from the SBA and from the government has made it very difficult for people that are, smaller businesses that don't have an infrastructure built within their company to be able to research and understand, and that's why I think it's so important to have, associates and associations with their CPAs like Strothman and others that can help them work through that, because they need to focus on their business. And it's amazing to me how many businesses have transformed in an 8-week period to the point where they're working at home. I know, what Greg and Phil, Dennis, a huge proportion of your all's employees are working from home now, and many of our customers are as well. So it's just it's a new dynamic that is making business and information seeking even more difficult.
Yeah, I would add to that. I mean, we joke around here. The day we make our last PPP loan is a happy day. It has been a very rewarding experience, because I think these loans were very helpful to the customer base, and that feels good that you're doing this. But it's, I'm ready to get back to business and the normal stuff. So it's also, at the end of the day, it's probably going to be a program that works. I don't think in every case it's going to work the way we thought it was, but we're kind of coming through this thing. It's a body blow, and I know we're going to talk about, what this recession looks like, if it's a V or if it's a longer term thing. But most of our customer base has gotten a capital injection. That's what it is at the end of the day, and that's going to make it a lot easier to work through. So.
Your point, Phil, about helping our clients when they were really in a very difficult position, and the resources we all threw at it, and it was so meaningful. And I think that's why we were also intense on working, whatever it took, so that we could help these businesses and their employees. And it's just something I've never experienced in my 35-year career, where we could help so many people at one time in a situation that was, for some, desperate.
I've been a banker now for 39 years. It's hard to believe, but I've never seen employees at our institution. I'm sure the rest of you guys felt the same way. I've never seen in a situation where everybody came together with a common purpose in a short period of time that helped so many people. And it's going to take that kind of effort on a go-forward basis to have the forgiveness work. And Matt, your question about forgiveness, what does it look like? It's going to be unique to every single company. And to me, that's the interesting thing. It was supposed to be very homogenous, and everybody was supposed to be able to do the same thing, and it didn't really work out that way, which made it much more complicated on a case-by-case basis. Every single application had people holding their breath, hoping that they'd get back that loan number. And so there was anxiety. There will be anxiety as people go through this process to have their loans forgiven. There will be anxiety for those that don't get it fully forgiven. There will be complexity for people to get it partially forgiven. It will be, a number of things along those lines. And I know that everybody on this call is there to help them, but they also need some additional help from their other service providers as well.
I was going to say, echo real fast those sentiments, but to give compliments to the operational teams for all the banks, because while folks like ourselves may well be the face of the bank in many instances, I got to tell you, it was very motivating to the one common cause statement to see how materially important those folks are and how that made them feel in impacting these businesses and really the lives of their employees equally. So while it was exhausting in many ways, it was motivating.
I would echo that and say that there are some unintended, not consequences, but benefits that come out of this. Number one, I think each of the banks that are represented here today, as well as many others, created tremendous brand loyalty and customer client loyalty through the process. People, when you hand people money, they're grateful to begin with, and in this kind of instance where they really have a need, it was important. As a service provider, I actually led the effort to create the service desk at Strothman and create the help desk there for the PPP loans, and we helped prepare the client applications, get the information right, and as you've all experienced, it has not exactly been a textbook flow of direction from the SBA on this thing. If you want a different opinion, wait 5 minutes, it'll change.
We joke around here, Matt, that they, and this is true, and I think the SBA has done a fantastic job relative to what they were trying to do over a short period of time. But at every step of the way, they were making it up as they went. It's no doubt about it.
And so were we, by the way. We were making it up as we went too, trying to figure out the right answer.
Yeah, I think when we got like the 15th interim final rules, you're thinking, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Interim and final.
Not exactly a lot of direction from Congress. It was a great idea, and it comes down to what you guys have been able to do to execute it, to make it work, and quite honestly, what the SBA was able to do, which I was really surprised at how effective they were. They were really good. So that's good.
To Greg's point, I think the operational folks, the behind the scenes folks, felt more connected to the client than they probably ever have, because they heard the stories, and that was, that was heartwarming, and really you see the character of people and the character of the organization comes out when there's a crisis like this.
Yeah, I think it comes out, and I think the community, despite what we've seen the last number of days, I think the community in general comes together a lot through this thing, and everybody is sharing the pain. Which brings me to the next point, following up on something Mark said. Now that they have the money, this is when work really begins, because we have a number of clients who have gotten the loans. And as we work through with them getting the loans, they're adjusting. They've kept people employed, but they're making adjustments. They're going to have to, some cases, go to split shifts in the manufacturing section. Going forward does not immediately come together the way you turn on a light switch and off they go again, just as though nothing ever happened. It's not a blip in time. We're finding that the demand side of the equation is completely unmeasured at this point in terms of what's happened to it and where some of the destruction has been on the demand side. There certainly has been a transfer from small to big. Main Street is different than Wall Street in terms of its experience. We can't all be Amazon or Google or, Walmart. So the people that we work with in this community, and the banks and the customers that you work with at your banks, they tend to be lower middle market customers. And when you look at them and you see what's happened, invariably, there are some metrics that are out of whack right now. Their AR has been eaten up, and some of it aged badly. Their AP, in many cases, has ballooned out on the other side. Their current revenue stream has been damaged quite a bit. So you've got clients out there with covenants and with loans that are existing, and this money has been used in a great injection, and it's kept them going, and they've got some reserves built up, but those reserves will evaporate very, very quickly, much more quickly than maybe they're sensitive to, because the demand side still isn't there and the revenue cycle isn't there, and they're not selling what they normally would sell in volume. And without revenue, there's a problem when it flows down to the bottom line, when it gets eaten up in the middle. So my question to you is, now that you maybe have 5 minutes to breathe, when do you start to rotate back towards your books of business that are there? When do you start to look at customers and say, we've got a problem in the business. They're going to need some help. They may need some restructuring. They may need some additional loans. They may not meet the underwriting criteria that they would have met 10 weeks ago in 10 days. What is the thought around that? As a workout person, we hear from the clients and from the attorneys and from other people in town that there is going to be a lot of activity. There are a lot of people struggling, and the portfolios, I'm sure in your own books, have been somewhat damaged. How can you speak to those things? What are you seeing? What are you feeling?
I'll start that off. I think what we've already started those discussions with clients and really just trying to determine what gets their revenue cycle reengaged, and they've got questions about that themselves. But since some businesses have started to open, probably a couple of weeks ago, we are seeing some more optimism on our clients. I think people have figured out, absent another, another bump up in the curve, that things are gonna be fine. And whether this is a V-shaped return to the economy or an L-shaped, I think people are more optimistic than I've seen them for, since this started. And it's really going to be interesting. I think as bankers, we're trying to determine if this is a long, drawn out issue or if it's going to be pop back pretty quickly. And the underwriting and the risk management of that is totally different. And we're hoping it's a V-shaped recovery, and you just kind of set this period to the side and say, well, that was just a one-time 3-month problem, and really look at the company going forward and really just look at what they're doing, as opposed to saying we've got a real problem here because we don't see revenue coming back.
You're a believer in IBIDAC.
Yeah, I am, and that's what we hope it is, because we can't. This is not a normal type of recession, and we hope it's really abnormal type, and it only lasts for a couple more months.
And I'll jump in from my perspective. We're back to business. We're not back to business as normal, but we have a number of new requests and companies that have asked us to consider expansion opportunities, acquisition opportunities, a number of things along those lines. So that's good. But we've spent a lot of time identifying our portfolios and our individual customers that we know that it's going to impact for a longer period of time. The hospitality industry is going to be suffering for quite some time, and I don't know, what that looks like long term for hotels and restaurants and anybody else that's affiliated or associated with the hospitality industry. And so we're meeting with them, just trying to make sure that we're up to speed on what we can do to help them through this process. I know that everybody on this phone has been through interest and principal deferrals, and we're getting ready for another round of principal and interest deferrals for people that truly need it. In the first round, there was probably the vast majority of people calling in saying, we don't know what's going to happen. We need some relief. And we jumped through hoops. I think this group of people on the phone and others that aren't on the phone, the community banking system has really proven its worth in this process, because I know that these guys who are competitors but also friends, it's been amazing to me to see how community banks can respond in this situation without waiting for somebody from another state, and in some circumstances, many states away, to make decisions for our customers. And so we're working through that diligently as a community banking industry, I know, and I'm very, very proud of that.
I would just add this: the uniqueness of what happened is, we had two sets of customers: the ones that were dealt a body blow by this thing, and then we had other sets of customers that were essential services and kept running and were very busy and doing well. And we looked at industries like hospitality and bars and restaurants and travel industry, and there's no telling, when that's going to come back. We have other customers that have done very well through this whole thing. So I think we all agree there's going to be a recession, and how deep and how quickly we recover from that's going to determine, I think, a lot of what we're talking about right now. Because this demand issue that you're talking about, Matt, is nobody really knows. That's the answer. Nobody really knows. So we've supported customers through things that Mark was discussing, deferral programs, and we're going through another round of those. Most banks kind of did those for 90 days, and if you needed another 90 days, you're kind of at that process right now. And the PPP loan obviously provided a lot of capital injection help to these clients, but really nobody knows what the economy in general will look like, because all of our customers are going to have issues with that. And there may be some industries that never look the same. And
right. I mean, you take a look at the manufacturing supply chain. They're just starting to come back now, but every one of them is taking the break that they always take at the end of June and into July. So as soon as they start to come back, the entire supply chain for Toyota, Ford, all of them is going to get another 3 to 4 week vacation when those guys shut down again. And that's just another hit. But the real question is, your underwriting criteria is based on tested ratios and analysis. All of that seems to be out the window right now as you look at these loans, because the ratios just aren't going to make it. And there's an unknown, as you're talking about, going forward. How does that impact your capacity as a bank to loan, especially with all the deferrals that they don't go away, they just balloon out. So at some point they come due.
Yeah, I don't, I think this has been so quick. I don't know that we know. I don't know that I've gotten a cycle of covenant violations, or if we've, with all the cash injection through PPP, we're not seeing overdrafts and borrowing base inadequacies and those kinds of things. I think it's kind of wait and see. Our regulators have given us some relief on TDR through these deferral programs. So, we don't have to call these things TDR and classify them. I think for 6 months is relative guidance that we've given. So, I hate to say it, but I'm not even, and maybe somebody else has a different opinion, I'm not really thinking in terms of that. We've always stuck with our customers, and there's some customers that will struggle. There's some industries that were really affected by this that aren't particularly well capitalized industries. The bars and the restaurants, they weren't well capitalized to begin with, and I think it's going to be a struggle. And then I don't know on the hospitality side, the travel side, nobody knows how quickly that gets back to capacity. I think most of us think that's going to be longer than 6 months period of time. So, my advice is to people is to build war chests and expect the unexpected.
Just real fast, just as to the covenant piece, I mean, I totally agree. So many of our covenant structures are on a trailing 12-month balance, things of the performance, I should say, things of that nature. We're not going to see that for several quarters. Most likely, there might be some that are impacted immediately. And again, I think all of us, as an attribute of the community bank's success, will work with those clients to ensure that, as much as possible, that everyone's treated fairly. But again, I think that's going to be delayed. You're going to see, probably a second quarter performance that's going to be acceptable in many ways, despite the fact that there maybe their most recent quarter was not, maybe even to the third quarter and fourth. So I think some of those decisions are going to be delayed, although I know all of us, as has already been mentioned, are already being proactive to get out with our clients, make sure they're being that their needs are being discussed and addressed. And so I think we're being proactive. I would only recommend to clients, they need to be proactive. If you've not been contacted by a bank, you need to have your plan in order. You need to have adjusted your forecasts, your budgets, your performance to make sure that we're all communicating effectively as to how to get through this, this next, truthfully, probably year.
Yeah, I think communication is, we've always, communicate with our clients, but in this situation, I think as you, Matt, as a CPA firm, banks are going to be really relied upon as more consultative than we've ever been, because it's a new situation. And but I think that's the advantage of local community banks, is that we know our clients, and we're only gonna do well if our clients continue to do well. So we've got a built-in motivation to keep our clients alive, and we're just all we're gonna deal with every situation on a case-by-case basis. But as far as covenant violations that we're going to see, I mean, we're going to see them, and we kind of have to just lay them aside and look forward. This is a time to look forward, not to look backwards, because if you look backwards, it makes no sense. So they're just that's really I think the difference is bankers have always kind of looked backwards and looked at performance, and we'll look at 2019, but we're not going to look at first 6 months of 2020.
Right. That's interesting, because one of the hallmarks of each of the four of you on this bank is that you are tremendous relationship banks. You stand by your clients and your customers. You have great long-standing relationships, and in this community, without you guys, this place is in deep, deep trouble. The good news is, as I understand it, is that the banks are much, much better capitalized today than they were in 08 and 09, which makes a huge difference for you. And it will be a forward-looking perspective, which is interesting, Dennis, because one of the criticisms of the banks always is that they underwrite out of a rearview mirror, and while they're driving at 100 miles an hour forward. And going forward with this, you really out the windshield. And I work in the consultative area and already have that perspective. But even on the accounting side of our firm, they're being asked things that are a different mindset for them in terms of where they're going versus where they've been. So I think your point is well taken. The real question is, in order to get the economy off the L and either to a U or a V, there has to be forward activity. So are you guys ready to lend to new projects, even with new relationships, when they come to you? Or is it something where not so fast, we're capitalized and we'd like to keep it that way?
Well, my answer is we're open for business, and we've got to do deals. I mean, we've got to take care of our clients. We've got to look for new opportunities, and it's really going to be future focused. So I think all of us here are open for business. We're all well capitalized, but we're all wanting to grow. We're not going to do anything stupid, but it's not business as usual, as Mark said, but it's still business. And we've got shareholders and we've got communities to take care of, and clients.
Yeah, and the I think that the other fact that is happening is that there are a lot of companies that were very well positioned to go into a severe downturn, and they are actively looking for opportunities. And we're wide open, and we had a loan committee meeting yesterday, and there were a surprising number of new business opportunities in that in that meeting. And many of those new opportunities have really come about because of relationships that we've built because of PPP with new clients and clients that we had that weren't as big of clients. And so it's, I think the vast majority of the media focuses on businesses that are really struggling and in difficult situations. But there are a lot of people that are moving forward and not slowing down.
Yeah, there are going to be a lot of opportunistic acquisition opportunities from the strong survivors, and I think some businesses are going to realize that they're just not capitalized enough to do what they need to do going forward. So I see a lot of pickup in the M&A field over the next year.
We're hoping so, Dennis.
The only thing I was going to add, Matt, was that, and I think you said it, but it's so different than it was in 08 and 09. So the banks were very healthy. That a lot of things are going to change. We're going to have some costs in our business that are probably going to affect the way we operate. We're going to have increased credit costs, and it's a little bit of a difficult earnings environment because of rate environment. But we've always been a lender, and I think everybody, all these community banks on the phone today, we're all lenders. We want to do deals, and we want to bring in customers, which we're paid to do. And good deals will get done. We're very anxious. And Mark mentioned opportunities, probably because these banks were very good at processing these PPP loans, and a lot of banks weren't. A lot of the larger banks really struggled with this, and it created opportunities. And so that shows you a willingness to lend. And we're always taking care of our customers. And I think we've had, off the top of my head, 2 large real estate deals we were looking at paused, and now they're restarting right now. We're not like, well, we don't want to do it anymore because we don't know what's going on. Good deals and good sponsors, good borrowers they're still out there. We kept lending through the cycle in 08 and 09, and I don't see any reason why we wouldn't do it now, except there's certainly uncertainty.
Right. I think you bring up 2 really good points. Number one, with interest rates where they are right now, it's a challenge for you, and you have to adjust your thought process in terms of, are you going to let them have 8, 9, 10-year loans at these interest rates on a fixed basis, or are we going to create shorter durations for the bullet? The second point is loaning through these times. Some of the large banks did stumble, and that's a great opportunity for you as community banks. You really enhanced your reputations and performed to the way that you were designed to perform, which is the importance of a community bank. The question is going forward, and I'm glad, Dennis, that you brought up M&A, because I do believe that there's going to be a lot of opportunity here. You have people who my age and a little bit older that probably don't want to fight another cycle of this thing and are ready to go. You've got some of the smaller ones who are recognizing there's redundancies in infrastructure, so there'll be some roll-ups out there. And then, of course, you have ones that just not well capitalized going in, not well capitalized, going to struggle, need to be combined with somebody else, or need to be liquidated out. As you look at that, do you look through your portfolios for those types of situations? And where do you think interest rates are going once we get through this? Are we in a long-term trough, or is this something that eventually you print enough money, somebody's got to pay for the next round?
Today's an interesting day. I mean, interest rates have jumped dramatically today, as has the market. So, just goes to show the uncertainty. I think people assumed that interest rates were going to stay flat and low for a long period of time. And today kind of proves otherwise. So I've talked too much, and I'll let one of the other guys go on.
Oh, I think it's so much was unforeseen. Again, we continue to be in unique circumstances, and so to try to forecast where those rates will be, to Mark's point, will be difficult at best. We're certainly not putting long-term fixed rates on the books for 10 years or anything of that nature, but definitively open for business to the prior conversation. And I thought a good word that was utilized was opportunistic, and that's for all of us. I mean, we want it for our borrowers and for those that are in good stead and those that are struggling. So we've definitely had opportunistic, strong sponsors that have reached out to us looking for that M&A opportunity. Hey, as you see weakness, please keep me in mind, types of conversations to ensure that, hopefully those businesses that might need to be acquired can still be viable in maybe a different iteration. So, but as far as rates go, it's impossible to forecast at this point for the foreseeable future that they'll remain low.
Are you still keying off the 10-year for the most part?
Yeah, we are, and we actually have had like a record year so far with respect to interest rate swaps. With rates low, we've expanded some facilities, lengthened them, and helped the borrowers, but basically laid that interest rate risk off to a third party. So I think that's it makes our borrowers stronger when they are taking advantage of this. But back to the whole community bank thing, and I really think the ability to be flexible and nimble. I think we showed that during PPP, and I think we'll show that during these next few months, as there will be uncertainty. There will be, bad historical news when we start getting those June financial statements for the second quarter, and the fact that we are so close to our clients, and as Phil said a while ago, good deals with good sponsors. We're going to continue to do them, and I think we're going to see a lot of deals where some people are just throwing in the towel and want to cash out and go to Florida.
That's when you call us, right, Dennis?
Yes. That's when you call Strothman.
There you go.
Yeah, not to be too overly, positive, because we all are, and we're all sincere in what we're saying. But look, just from an article I read the other day, bankruptcy filings in May were up almost 50% year over year from last year. So there are going to be difficult situations that we have to face, and I think we'll all deal with them in a positive, productive manner. But those can provide opportunities, I think, for those that are more highly liquid and capable of potentially making that acquisition.
All right. So when you look at that, we're all positive. Everything is good. We need to be positive because we have to make things happen. As we all know, it is primarily a confidence game. If you have confidence, you can make things happen. If you believe, there will be activity. So as you look through all that, though, you are bankers and you are risk managers at its heart. So the real question is, so where's the trouble? Where is the trouble? Where are the hidden landmines that are out there? Because it's not, you don't come through something like this and you just walk down the street and it's all good again. Where are the...
I think, as it's been discussed before, hospitality is obviously an industry that is probably going to have a dramatic change, and that's how and when that comes back is anybody's guess. People are using up capital, so there are going to be companies that are going to be more levered, and then finally the point you brought up. When does the revenue come back? And that is so much built on as you said, confidence, just expectations of the future. And that's really, I think that's the big risk here is just how long does the recovery take and when does it start?
I also think that commercial real estate. There are a number of sectors of commercial real estate that are going to change dramatically, and so we are watching that. All the trends on the remote workers is going to change commercial retail, commercial real estate from an office building perspective. Commercial real estate on the retail side is going to change, and be affected for a period of time, if not long term. So we're watching, commercial real estate, every segment of it: hospitality, commercial real estate, retail, and office building, and a number of other things. And so when people come to us with a really speculative transaction in any of those sectors, it's a difficult conversation unless the people are extremely liquid and have other ways to pay to be able to take that risk. Just to expand on Dennis's comments.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all the above. I think that you had these industries that were affected the most, like hospitality and those things. You have to look at them and see if they have the capital to move forward. But I don't look for it in any one place. We've always tried to be pretty diversified in our risk and work with customers that have good plans. And I don't see one area that other than restaurants, because at the end of the day, they really experience this like no one else has, and they're not, as an industry, extremely well capitalized. So we don't have a large restaurant exposure at the bank, but I think that's going to be a tough one. I think some of these hotels, with some of the help that's going on, I think if they can get their occupancy and rates back in a reasonable period of time, they'll be okay. Travel related stuff, who knows? And then the question we're going to ask is, what are the industries that are going to be affected forever? Some things that are going to be changed forever, and what do those industries look like? But we've tried to be diversified. We've never looked for hot spots to get out of or avoid doing. I think as community banks, we're banking a community of businesses, and there's not. I've heard of banks saying, "Well, we're not going to bank contractors anymore." If we have a recession, we could look at our portfolio and say we're going to avoid anybody who's a cyclical risk on a go-forward basis. That's just not. I think it's never been our approach, and I don't think it's the approach of any of the community banks on the phone today to say we're out. We're in. So
we have we have similar thoughts. I think some of the interesting aspects going forward, I think Mark specifically referenced commercial real estate. Look, 90% of our bank employees right now are working from home and have been reasonably successful. As efficient, probably not. And we're going to move quickly to 25% going back, and then 50%. But just as that impacts office, commercial real estate, is again going to be, I think, an aspect for us to really gain some insight in as to who basically states we don't need that office space anymore, and what does that do to the market. I do think there's some uniqueness in industries. As an example, clearly food service, restaurants struggle amazingly. We've got clients that are in pizza delivery. They're up 30%. So you can't necessarily just say food service is problematic. I mean, there are sectors of that have thrived. And then I would finally say, I don't know that we have reasonable lending to nonprofits, but nonprofits are struggling. And so I think from again, clearly nonprofits borrow. They may not at the same level as a for-profit, but I think, we have concerns that there's going to be nonprofits that are going to be difficult to sustain themselves.
I think those are really strong concerns. We've been reached out to already for consolidations and struggle, and they were on the razor's edge to begin with, and not always the most well run of organizations initially. We look at this, I want to elevate the conversation just a little bit and without getting into specifics. But when I look at risk, from our perspective, we look at a number of different areas of risk. So the one risk that nobody has mentioned, which nobody wants to talk about, is political risk. I think there's enormous political risk out there with everything that's going on today and where we go next in terms of leadership or who gets into power and what the reaction is to this whole thing afterwards. Clearly, speaking of commercial real estate, I personally would not want to have my primary business be loaning money to real estate developers in downtown central communities right now. I think that's probably a high risk. And if you are downtown, you can take a look and see what some of the results are. You've all been affected one way or the other by that directly. Some of the other things that we're noticing is that there are large inventory builds that have occurred inside the companies. This inventory is sitting there, some of it aging, some of it perpetual, and there's going to be write-offs in that area. There's going to be lack of replenishment in that area. That just dribbles itself down the hill to the rest of the economic food chain. To your point, Greg, I think that each area has unique slivers in it that can be opportunistic, and there are parts of it that can be damaged and tainted. To Phil's point, I think the fact that workers are working at home and that they're remote, and to your point, Greg, that they seem to be somewhat effective. We found the same thing. I think part of it is going to be, are we in a command economy where we can command workers to do what we want anymore? Or do they resist coming back downtown and demand to be where they are, where things are much more portable? And they've learned, yes, the pizza delivery system is up, but all they had to do was act like a teenager, press the button on the phone, and it appeared. Or, is the work there? It appeared. So they're learning to live in a technology environment that's remote and on demand for them. So is there an economic shift at its heart that will play into how you loan, behave, and act as the resources that you are for the community? And where are those risks?
Well, I think, the political or the social risk that has been in front of us the past few weeks. I mean, that's obviously a risk, and this country has, problems. But I never would bet against the United States to get these things going in the right direction. I mean, it's sad, and it's just hate to see it, but this is still the greatest economy that the world has ever seen and probably will ever see, and very resilient. So I don't think we look out to the future and say we're not going to come back. I just think that's where our country's always been from when it started.
Does November give you anxiety, Dennis?
I think we've, as an economy, as a country, it seems like that we are pretty flexible when it comes to what's going on in Washington, D.C. And I think we learn how to operate regardless of who's in charge. And we probably, as business people, probably elevate that even beyond what the impact is. I don't mean to sound like it doesn't matter, but I think, as we've seen, we operate through ups and downs, wars, terrorism, viruses, and I look for the country to continue to do that.
I would say, to piggyback on Dennis's comments, one of the things that I'm most concerned about on a go-forward basis, irrespective of parties or political aspirations is what is the tax rate going to be for our customers and for us on a go-forward basis? Because if the tax rates change pretty dramatically, then it will end up affecting available capital and reinvestable capital. And to me, that's a real concern on a go-forward basis. Many of the things that everybody's talking about, many of the things that have occurred because of the pandemic is driving up the need for additional taxes, and that is a long-term. It could be a short-term concern.
So you really believe that deficits might matter someday?
That's it. Someday it's gonna matter, and I've got children and grandchildren, and it's gonna really matter to them. And more importantly is many of the things that. Spending several trillions of dollars and probably spending many more trillions of dollars this year just as a result of the pandemic. It's got to be paid for somehow, some way, and maybe even quicker than we were positioned for or situated for before. And so if that, necessitates a pretty quick tax increase, then everybody's got to reevaluate what their cash flow is and available capital and how are they going to pay for it. And so to me, that's when taxes go up and people pay more taxes, then it changes the investment thesis.
And the impact on future interest rates with the deficit, and we have to print more money to take care of the deficits, and that will it's either going to get us one way or the other. It'll be taxes or it'll be inflation.
Maybe both. Clearly, I grew up I was an economics person way back when, and there was this thing called crowding out. And at some point, somebody's got to buy the paper. And when they buy the paper, they're going to want to be compensated for the fact that everybody's got the paper all over their living room, and it becomes less valuable. So some of that will be there. And to Mark's point, all those things undercut the momentum of a recovery or a growth cycle at some point. And so I think that's kind of where I was driving is, do you see that maybe not in the next 6 months to 12 months, but as lender, you have to be looking out 24, 36, 48 when you make these loans. And will that be calculated?
And I would say absolutely. And nobody ever talks about inflation anymore, but I don't know how you do all this and not have inflation. And at some point, and that's a bad deal. If we have higher taxes and some recessionary pressures and inflation, and that's going to leave a mark. So,
as they say, that's going to leave a mark.
But
perfect storm.
I would say the same thing Dennis said. I've always been surprised how resilient we are as an economy. And I think that's because we live in a free society. What you see going on right now, it's freedom at work. So, there's parts of it we don't like, and there's parts of it we probably are, do like. But we're a better country for that. We'll come out stronger on the other end. And because of that, we've all been around the Chicken Littles that I remember in 2009, the world was coming to an end, and the world as we know it. And that's not what happened. And I have no reason to believe that will happen now. I think the hardest thing in this whole thing is that we're ending the longest period of economic growth and recovery, and certainly in our careers. And so what does a recession after that look like? And none of us know, and then with COVID, I worry greatly. If there's one thing that I'm most worried about in the economy right now is how much money the government spends. And when this PPP was going on, I'm like, holy cow, how are we going to pay for this? Because deficits do matter. And, there's no free lunch. You're going to pay for this somehow. You're going to print money, which is going to be a disaster, or you're going to borrow money, which we've already borrowed a whole lot. And that could cause inflation and interest rates to go up, and who knows?
So you're not a big believer in the Japanese model of 10 years of no inflation.
No, I'm a believer in that once your national debt exceeds your GDP, you're going to have permanently your growth rate is going to be permanently slowed, and I think we're there. We're there right now, and everything, all the events would lead you to believe we need to spend some money on a lot of things in this country, and I would echo Mark's comments. I don't know. Whatever a politician says to you, I think you should prepare for your tax rates to go up. I don't see any other solution, and I'm for low taxes.
Well, they work if they're low taxes, but the question is they only work when you can afford to have them work. What I'm hearing from all of you is but it's not going to be business as usual.
It's not. I would say amen to all these comments. In somewhat of a micro sense, I would say benefit that all of us realize in Louisville, Kentucky, as community bankers is it's not as volatile as it is in other places. So there will be impact, and again, all of these must be paid for through increased taxes, things of that nature. But I do take some solace in the fact that impact in Louisville is highly different than larger urban areas, and helps our underwriting. Therefore,
so Dennis and I think joined the banking world about the same time, 1982, and I remember when I joined Citizens Fidelity Bank at that time here in Louisville. At interest rates, the prime rate was 22%. The mortgage rate was 14.5%. And taxes were much higher. And as a nation, as a country, as a people, we worked through that. And I know it was difficult because many of the things that I did in my very first job in banking was to calculate when people were going to run out of money, because at 22%, it didn't take very, very long. But there was definitely a way forward, and people figured it out, and we had an incredible run. And I think we can do it again. It's just we're gonna have to pay a price to get there.
Yeah, I mean, if you remember the late '70s with stagflation, and you had high unemployment, you had inflation. It wasn't a very appealing country at that point, just from the standpoint of what that caused. And and Reagan came in, and Volcker, and they, the recession happened, and it was difficult. But we found a way out of it, and I think we will on this. But there's going to be, I think all of us have been on this call have been optimistic and positive. But as bankers, we're used to dealing with situations where companies are struggling, and we help them get through it, and that's part of the business as much as the fun stuff. And I think that is is what we're going to be doing to a certain extent for the next 6 months, and we'll do that.
All right, good. All right, we've got about 5 to 10 minutes left. In that time, what I'd like to do is just kind of go around, and I think it's been a great discussion. I can't thank you enough for doing this, truly. But I'd like to go around and just take the one or two key takeaways that, from the conversation that each of you would like to state at the end. So why don't we start with, we'll start with Phil. I have the screen, so I'll rotate around where I see it. So I'll start with Phil and then work my way around.
Yeah, I think, one of the, relative to banking relationships, I think I would, for anybody on the call, I can't emphasize how important it is that you have a relationship with your bank. They're your large capital provider, that you know your banker, that you know the bank. And, our industry kind of goes through waves and we get commoditized a little bit. But when there are hard times like this, challenging times, it makes a big difference to know your bank and know who you're dealing with. And so have a relationship with your bank. Don't treat your bank like a commodity. It's a different service that we're providing. We're I think during good times, everybody's calling on you, wants your business, but it's in bad times that you really need somebody to have a relationship with. And then I would also recommend, have a plan. Expect the unexpected during this next part. Nobody knows, I think, if you got anything off this conversation today, what the next year looks like is, nobody really knows. But have a plan, expect the unexpected, and communicate that to your bank and let them know what your plan is, what your plan B is, and be in constant communication.
Greg?
I have similar thoughts. Look, all of us, this may clearly be self-serving as a lifelong community banker, but all of us believe in the importance of what we do. And to Phil's point, those relationships are the key to everyone's success. I don't mean simply the banks. We all exist to support the community in a very broad-based manner. And so really to emphasize much of what Phil said, I think communication is the key. You've got to make sure you're communicating effectively with your banker. And that includes painful conversations when things have not gone favorably, as clearly we've all experienced. To Phil's thought, that you have a plan and that you're executing it and that you can foresee a more positive outcome at some point in time. So communication is undoubtedly the key. Don't mislead, be honest, direct, forthright, and your banker will work with you. Your banker will help you find a solution. This group will. So I think that communication is essential.
Okay, thank you. And I couldn't echo your thoughts more. Dennis?
Yeah, Phil and Greg took all the good stuff. So
we have confidence in you, Dennis. You'll figure it out.
Yeah. I think the thing that I would say for looking at businesses as they prepare for the next few months is do what the banks have done, which is kind of a stress test your business and look at most likely, and look at what if this happens and what if that happens, so that because of the level of uncertainty and because we're dealing with something we've never dealt with before, really kind of have some, kind of three different scenarios and plans and what how you respond with what happens. So I think that whole planning process and being prepared for just not what you think is going to happen, but what could happen. And again, use your resources, use your attorneys, use your accountants, use your bankers as sounding boards for this, because your success and their success go hand in hand. So we've got with our clients, we've got really a symbiotic relationship that we do well as they do well. So our point is not to tighten the screws. Our job is to help them get through this situation, and that's what being a relationship banker is all about. And I think that's why the banks on here are successful, and really we all have a very meaningful job because of those relationships that we formed with our clients.
Okay, thank you. Mark?
To reaffirm what everybody else has already said, I made a speech to an MBA class at U of L several years ago, and when I asked them how many of them had personal relationships with bankers, none of them raised their hand. And then I asked them, how many of you want to know your bankers? And they all said, they'd prefer not to know any bankers, that they can get accomplished what they want to get accomplished online. And I promise you that if those MBA students are business owners now, they have changed their minds. And we had a pretty active discussion about why they didn't want to talk to banks, why they didn't. A couple of them said they didn't like bankers. And, so I'm reaffirming what Bill, Greg, and Dennis had said, obviously, but I think that, from my perspective, it's always good for a business owner, strategic management of part of businesses to have a financial philosophy, number one, and then to operate with their strategic direction in that financial philosophy. And people that don't really have that financial philosophy built in their mind or in their company seem to migrate around and sometimes wander off of their strategic direction because they didn't have a financial philosophy. And that sounds pretty, out there, but it is really good to think about what that is in your company and for you as an individual business owner, if that's the case. So that's probably my takeaways.
And actually, that's a perfect segue for me as the Director of Strategic Advisory Services at Strothman. So it works well. And having been on all three sides of the equation, where I've been the guy loaning the money when I was at JP Morgan, I've been the one dealing with the clients who hide from the bankers and have to work them out. And I've dealt with you from the other side of the table, each of you with your own client portfolios, where I've been able to help the clients work their way through and come back to life or find a better solution for themselves that works through. I understand clearly that communication is the critical piece for anybody that's listening to this. The banks are your partners. And the reason that I had the four of you on this call is that I've had long-standing relationships with each of you. I have the highest of respect for each of you and your institutions. We've had great relationships all the way through on multiple levels. And this community cannot thrive without you guys and some of the other players in the community. And it's critical that the people that come to you understand that you are here as partners and you are here to help them, because if you don't make loans, you might as well go home and just mail it in, because you're not business. So you're in the business of helping businesses. But to your point, Greg, they can't hide. They can't be afraid of the bad conversation. They can't act like my 6-year-old when at the time when he broke the cookie jar and hid in his room because he didn't want anybody to know that it was broken, but pieces were all over the floor. It's pretty obvious. So, in working with you, I want to thank each of you for taking the time today out of your schedules. I know your time is valuable and important. So I want to thank you for working with us to do this roundtable. I think it's very important. We will be making this available in a distribution format for everybody, and it will be distributed out to our client list. If anybody sees it and wants it and is not on the distribution list, you can simply get it at strothman.com and be able to download it there. In the meantime, I hope everybody here, has a good rest of the weekend and stay safe. I appreciate what you do for me, and I appreciate what you do for the community. And the big takeaway from this is that we are in business. There will be business. It may not be the same shape and form as before, but to Dennis's point, do not be afraid to enlist help. Ask for help. There are plenty of people out there that can give you help, and a lot of it can start with the bankers. So with that, I just want to say thank you to each of you for taking the time today. I'm truly, truly grateful.